Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you all are arriving to the Intentional Conversations podcast today in good spirits and good health. I am Dr. Nika, your host. I'm the founder and lead principal consultant for NWC. And we are so glad to welcome you to Intentional Conversations VodCast, where we intersect conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leadership and business. We are so glad that you are here. We don't take it for granted when individuals show up week after week. You let us know that you value this time, the content we share, this sense of community that we've created, and we're really grateful for that. So I want to shout out the NWC team for working so tirelessly week after week after week for almost the past 5 years to bring this virtual learning experience to the broader community so that each of us can learn with and from each other, deepen our knowledge and understanding of all things DEIB and relate it to leadership and business. We have a great show that has been planned for you today, and I cannot wait for you to meet our guest co-host momentarily. But if you haven't been a part of our podcast community, you know one of the things we like to do at the top of the hour is just spend some time recognizing who's all in the room. So I will encourage you to go to the chat. Let us know where you are joining the conversation from. It is always a treat for us to see the many different geographies, cities, markets that people are representing as part of our podcast community. And not only just within the United States, but we often have a lot of folks that will join outside of the US, and we are grateful. If you are part of our Zoom community, then we often say that cameras are encouraged, but certainly not required. We do love the smiling faces, but we also realize that many people will join in an auditory capacity. Maybe you just have it playing in the background, listening while you're taking care of some other things. Whatever way in which you are joining, we are grateful and so glad that you are here with us today. At NWC, we really value disability inclusion. So with that in mind, I want you to know that we have closed caption that has been enabled for those in our community who could benefit from it. So I wanted to make sure we put that into your hearing. If you're part of our community right now and you would love to connect with others in this community beyond this hour of time, then we encourage you to also drop into the chat your LinkedIn information. This lets us know that you want to continue maybe some of the conversations and the connections beyond this hour. And we're always grateful for that. I am excited to connect with any one of you that I may not already be connected with. And so my team is dropping, of course, my LinkedIn information into the chat. And I certainly welcome some engagement there as well. I want to take a moment because we also go live on LinkedIn. So there's also a constituents of people that are on LinkedIn joining and receiving this content. So I do want to shout that group out. If you are joining us through LinkedIn Live, make sure you're using the comment section. My team is watching that carefully, and we're bringing in some of your expressions, your sentiments into the Zoom chat so that we all can be connected. Okay, happy Friday, everyone, again. And welcome to Intentional Conversations VodCast. I hope you all enjoy today's show. Let the conversations begin, and that is precisely what we're going to do at this hour. If you're just tuning in, you have joined the Intentional Conversations VodCast, where we intersect conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with business and leadership. And we're so glad that you're here with us today. I want to take a moment just to share some information that may be relevant to the way in which you're showing up in the world as allies, advocates, champions of this broader work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I will do that at this time. I will remind you that as we're sharing throughout this hour to please, please, please use the chat. That is part of how we're going to get proximate to each other in this virtual learning space. And so if something is said that resonates with you, then share those sentiments, pull out those emojis and reactions, and let's, create this sense of community through the chat. So today is August 9th, and for those of you who may not be aware, this is the International Day of the world's Indigenous Peoples. And so I wanted to make sure that we certainly provide that level of recognition. This is an opportunity for you all to learn a bit more about the Indigenous community and ways in which you can stand in solidarity and to support those individuals. But all over internationally, people are taking a moment to really just lean into the knowledge that they have and to find ways to just stand in solidarity solidarity with this community. So I wanted to make sure that we took a moment to acknowledge that as well here at NWC. I also want you to know that August is National Black Business Month. And as a Black woman founder, I certainly would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to acknowledge that Black businesses matter. And so I want you all to support Black businesses in whatever way possible. Make sure that you're finding those directories, but you are patronizing and really supporting those Black businesses, lifting them up so that they can grow and thrive and compete effectively in the marketplace. It really helps all of us. Rising tide lifts all boats. And so National Black Business Month. So really important for you to know that August is also known as Black Philanthropy Month. Many markets will celebrate with different initiatives around Black Philanthropy Month. And so this gives me an opportunity to also let you know that on a personal level, my husband and I have a foundation. It's called Carlo and Nika White Foundation, C&W for short. And we are leaning into Black Philanthropy Month with a special fundraising event that's going to take place on August 27th. The team will drop into the chat a link to the page on our website with more information. There are ways to get involved. Even if you're not in our local market, you can participate in our silent auction that's coming up and other ways just to lean into this whole idea of the importance and the power of Black philanthropy. And in fact, to help you do that, there is a blog post that I recently penned that I will also have my team to share into the chat. So I hope that you will take advantage of reading that. But this event is an ode to Black philanthropy. So I really look forward to sharing that experience with as many of you as possible during this Black Philanthropy Month. Now, I have 3 LinkedIn Learning courses that are out there. They've been doing incredibly well. Thank you to the over 30,000 learners who have taken my courses that are available. And I am really grateful that you found them to be a really useful resource. I also want to continue to tease that this month, any day now, we're going to be launching and releasing LinkedIn Learning course number 4. And it is incredibly timely because when we think about the need for us to be intentional to help create discourse that is civil, that is productive, as we learn with and from each other, especially during this high stakes election year, we need to understand what is the difference between free speech versus hate speech, and how can we make sure that we're navigating that in a way that's very respectful of all individuals as we're navigating different places and spaces we may find ourselves in. So if that sounds of interest to you and could be of value, then stay tuned because the release date is coming, and I hope that you will find that to be a great resource for you and all of those in your network. Now, if you've enjoyed the Intentional Conversations podcast, but you know of some folks who can't make it during this hour to be able to be a part of our live community, then there's multiple ways for people to get this content. Every week, we extract the audio and we make Intentional Conversations available in podcast capacity for wherever you like to get your podcast content. So share the word out. Also let folks know that if they love the visual aspect, all of our replays are available on our YouTube channel, and you can catch all of those replays in perpetuity. Actually, we keep them out there on the YouTube channel. So I hope that you will be aware of those resources and share them out where appropriate. This is the part of our show where I give you a little bit of what you have to look forward to in future weeks in terms of our guest co-hosts that will be joining us, sharing with our VodCast community. I'm excited that next Friday, August 16th, we're going to be welcoming Elaine Lynn Herring. And in that Intentional Conversations podcast, we will discuss the ways we learn silence, ways leaders unintentionally silence people, and practical ways to create a culture of voice on your team. Elaine has recently written a book, and she's going to tell us all about that. But I really hope that you will join us on the 16th, so mark your calendars. And then the week following, on August 23rd, we have another great guest co-host that will be joining us, none other than Suzanne Mariga. And we're going to be talking about how companies can maximize their profits, why psychology is important to reaching your profit goals, and tax strategies implemented by high net worth entrepreneurs that can also work for the rest of us. You know, she really, like me, has a great passion for advancing minority businesses and helping us to shorten the learning curve so we can compete effectively in the marketplace and be good stewards of all of the resources that come our way as business owners. So I hope that you will join us for that conversation on the 23rd. And rounding us out at the end of the month on August 30th, we have Shelmana Abji, who's going to be joining us. And in that Intentional Conversations podcast, we're going to discuss how to intentionally, my favorite word, define short and long-term success means, preventing bias from impacting your performance, 4 types of relationships that she's going to uncover for us to help us emerge as leaders and ways women of color can overcome self-imposed imposter syndrome. I call imposter syndrome a misdiagnosis. So I'm interested to hear what Shelmana has to say about that topic. Okay. So now we're at the point in our program where I will pause and provide a formal introduction of today's special guest co-host. And I do so by reading their bio. Why do I do that? Because I think it's so incredibly important for our community to know the accolades, the experiences, the credentials in which our guest co-host shows up to this conversation with. And so today will be no different. And I am so excited to welcome Ty Christensen, who is the co-founder and president for Arrive Home, a national affordable housing innovator dedicated to helping responsible borrowers in underserved communities become homeowners through their down payment assistance and earned equity programs. We'll learn all about that. Ty serves as chair of the American Mortgage Diversity Council, chair of the NAREP, which stands for National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, Midwest Regional Council, and chair of the California MBA DEI Committee. She also serves as a board member for Access Lift 360, a nonprofit that focuses on providing the mortgage lending industry with a more diverse talent pool of job candidates. Ty was named a Woman of Influence Award by Housing Wire in 2024 and 2023. She also won the 2023 Women with Vision Award, the 2023 National Mortgage Professional Woman of Inspiration Award, the Success Magazine's 2023 Emerging Entrepreneur Award, the 2022 Thought Leader Award from Progress in Lending, and the 2021 Mortgage Professional America Elite Women Award. So no question about she knows what she's doing. Ty has been featured in Forbes, CBS News, Business Insider, Fox Business News, and Consumer Affairs. He's passionate about assisting credit-worthy borrowers in disadvantaged communities become homeowners and build intergenerational wealth through home ownership. Ty lives in Eagle Mountain, Utah, with her husband, her 3 daughters, and their Black lab, Charlie. He attended Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and has over 20 years of experience in the mortgage industry, specializing in working with underserved communities. And so if you've been with us before, VodCast community, you know what we do at this point. When I go to stop sharing, you find the emojis, the reactions, all the words of affirmations, just to let our guest co-host know how extremely grateful we are to have her here today, to have her sharing with our VodCast community. I'm adding her to the spotlight, and I will give her a chance to greet this audience in her own way. But we do have a tradition here, Ty, and that tradition is before we release our guest co-host to share with our community, we like for them to share something with us that we would not know from hearing your bio, which we just did, or from looking at your LinkedIn profile. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. And I am so glad that our audience has a chance to experience you and all of the enlightenment that I know you're going to bring to today's conversation. Welcome.
Well, thank you. That was quite the introduction. I sound a lot more important than I really am. I'm really just a Jersey Shore girl who moved to Utah and happened to stay here for, 20 something years. I've got 3 daughters and our Black lab, Charlie, who I am hoping and praying does not wake up during this interview, or we will have to introduce her to you and your guests as well. So thank you so
Used
much.
to it all.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, my name's Ty. Like my bio said, I've been in the industry for 20 years. Had 3 daughters. My oldest is 21. Her name is Kelsey. I have an 18-year-old named Maya, a 12-year-old named Dylan, and our little Black lab, Charlie. I've been with my husband since 1999. We actually met shortly before I moved to Utah. His sister married one of my best friends, so he flew to New Jersey for the wedding, and we met at the wedding. And he was like, I heard you're moving to Utah to go to school. And I'm thinking, yeah, so what? He's like, I actually live about 7 miles from your campus. So when I got there, we started kind of hanging out, and, the rest is history, as they say. Little known fact about me, in 2015, we actually got divorced. I was very unhappy in my life. Mental health was a real challenge for me. And I wanted to step out on my own and really stand on my own 2 feet and stop feeling like I had made choices that were not exactly serving me in that moment. So I went from being divorced to being a marathon runner to pound the pavement and beat the demons, so to speak. So I ran that marathon ran for 4 years. I did 3 marathons, about 20 half marathons, countless 10Ks and 5Ks and 10 milers. And through my journey of running, I actually rediscovered myself. Being on a
Mm.
trail alone for 18 miles is a really long time, and there's nothing else to do but think, right? You're just pounding the pavement, you got your headphones in, and it's a really great place where your demons can meet your calm thoughts. And when you merge those two together, you're able to have realizations about yourself, things that you wish you could change. And over time, I
Yeah.
changed those things about myself that I was unhappy with. And so in 2019, I intentionally re-entered into a relationship with my husband, and we got remarried. So here we are today.
That is such a wonderful story for so many reasons. So, first of all, I want to draw your attention to the chat because we have shared some pictures of Ty from just maybe a couple of the marathons, of the mini marathons that she just shared with us that she's been a part of. And we'll have to, well, to take your word for all that you shared about the experience because, yeah, that hasn't been part of my journey. But I'm always really intrigued and impressed when people have the perseverance and the discipline to be able to do something of that nature. That's no small feat at all. But what I also appreciate, Ty, is your willingness to share with our community the why behind your beginning to find this passion and this outlet. I think you said, and I'm paraphrasing here, it was a way for you to fight the demons. And, we often will express and amplify the importance of us normalizing conversations of mental health so that people don't feel like it's something that they have to deal with in isolation. And I love that you had a very specific outlet that not only allowed you to find yourself, but also to rekindle what I am calling probably a really great love story. And I love that for you. I really do. I absolutely love that for you. So kudos.
Thank you so much. It was interesting. I moved to Utah in 1999. I was 18 years old to go to college. And I
Yeah.
married Adam just after my 20th birthday. So I've been with
Okay.
him my entire adult life.
Yes.
Moving from Southern New Jersey to Provo, Utah, you want to talk about a diversity change. I mean, I grew up in a very multicultural neighborhood. South Jersey is kind of this little neck of the woods where we grew up in the forest, but the beach was about 2 miles outside of our street.
Yeah.
So really great little area, very diverse. Back in the day, the Atlantic City casinos were booming. And so we had a lot of influence of different cultures, different neighborhoods, different people that we met all the time. My high school was very multicultural. And so to move from that environment to a space where I would go literally months without seeing another person of color, not even a
Yeah.
Black person, right? Like Utah in the 90s was very different than Utah now. I would count
Yeah.
when I saw Black people and I would look for that interaction, but it was so few and far between. It was it was demoralizing in a lot of ways, to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
had to constantly explain my race, constantly explain myself. I felt like every time someone asked me a question about a Black person, I was responsible for answering for the entire Black community, and
Your
we are not a
population.
monolith. I don't know what Black
Yeah.
people think about this. I can tell you what I think, but it took me a lot of years to get that language and stand up for myself and say, I can give you my perspective, but I don't know the perspective of the Black culture at large. If
Absolutely.
you want to ask me about who's going to bring mac and cheese to Thanksgiving, I can give you hours of an answer about how we choose that person, but I don't know how the Black community feels about very specific things because again, we're not a monolith. And so
Right.
living here and feeling marginalized really led to me leaving my marriage. I mean, I thought the only reason
Mm.
I'm with him is because I met him when I was so young, and he's really
Yeah.
the only person that I've been with. So I took up marathon running and started dating a lot. I had, several long-term boyfriends. And then at the end of the day, I found myself looking for the very specific qualities that I had fallen in love with my husband in other people. And, newsflash,
Yeah.
I'm not going to find him in another person. So,
Right.
we started connecting again. And I'm going to be honest, he did not want to date me again. I had to put in a lot of work to get him to agree to, like, will you at least just go to coffee with me? Like, just meet me at Starbucks. And that
Yeah.
was different for me. I've never had to ask anyone on a date or really put in a lot of effort to show someone that I was like seriously interested in them. But
Mm,
he was not interested in me when I wanted to circle back or spin the block, as the young kids say.
yeah, yeah.
But it ended up working out for the best.
No, I still love that. I think that this goes down in history for Intentional Conversations podcast, the only time so far that we have been able to be front and center and witness to the storytelling of this beautiful love story with such a great happy ending. We had one of our podcast community members that shared, Tracy, into the chat. I love how Ty reframed what some might call a failure, divorce, into a positive share with a happy ending. It takes courage to lead with vulnerability, and Ty just modeled it. I totally agree, Tracy. So thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. And that is such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. So I want to lean in a little bit to this, what you were sharing about Utah and how it was really hard. Sometimes when I travel a good bit, especially if I travel with my husband, I'm always too looking for people who look like me. I think that's just part of our human nature. We want to be in spaces and places where we feel like we're not the only lonelies and that there are others that we can relate to. And, just again, this shared sense of identity. And so I'm often like looking around and I'm like, okay, when I'm in those areas where, there's not a lot of black and brown people, when I finally spot them, I'm like, I see black people. And it just becomes like this big excitement, right? And so what was coming up for me is this notion of I see black people as you were telling your story about Utah. But I want to stay there for a second because I want you to help us to understand that how living, and you touched on this a little bit, but I think it's worth digging and unpacking a bit further. But how has living in Utah in transitioning from a majority white state
Mhm.
shaped your personal and professional experiences?
Oh, well, I will try not to drone on forever. Shonda Rhimes, I read her book last year for my book club, and she has this saying called FOD, first, only, different. And if you're an
Yeah.
FOD, you recognize FOD in other people. And I have
Yes.
been an FOD for the last 20 something years, right? So I'm a Black person living in a majority white state. I am a moderate Democrat living in a very conservative Republican state. I work in banking, which is majority white and majority male. So it was really difficult for me in the beginning of my career to kind of claim space that I felt like belonged to me without seeming a little
Right.
bit uppity about it. But I
Yeah.
think that there is a nexus there, right? Where you can be proud of being the first, the only, or the different person in the room. And you can bring your unique perspective to whatever meeting you're attending, conference you're attending, borrower you're working with. When I first got into the mortgage industry, I didn't realize the lack of Black home ownership within our country
Yeah.
because I come from a generation of homeowners.
Yeah.
Homeownership goes back 3 generations in my family. So my great 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 grandfather, his name was Henderson Faribault. He was born enslaved in North Carolina, and he was in the field by the age of 9 picking cotton.
Mm.
He transitioned to be a house Negro during his teenage years, where he learned how to cook. And then after emancipation, he left the plantation and started working for a few notable restaurants in Hillsborough, North Carolina, as their chef. And he became kind of obsessed with this idea of buying property, which, again, back in the day, barely freed slave becoming obsessed with buying property was pretty unique.
Yes.
He died in 1902 at the ripe old age of 63. He owned 50 acres of land, and he left a home for each one of his 8 children. There's actually
Mm.
still one of his homes standing in North Hillsborough, North Carolina. There's a plaque in the park about him, and Faribault Lane is a street now where one of his old homes used to be. So from that one choice, the homeownership has been a really driving narrative in my family. We're raised,
Mm.
taught to grow up, get married, buy a house, go to college, get a job, contribute to your community. And
Hmm.
live in a multicultural neighborhood, and all of your friends, families are homeowners, all of your cousins are homeowners, all of your aunts and uncles are homeowners, your grandparents are homeowners. I did not realize that Black home ownership rates were so dismal until I got
Right.
to the lending space. So I started in mortgages in 2003. And at first I thought, well, maybe I'm not seeing a lot of people of color purchasing homes just because of where I live, right? That made
Yeah.
total sense. And then when I started working for some national mortgage companies and I started underwriting and bringing kind of a unique perspective to the space, like, well, Black and brown folks use credit differently than the white community. And
Yeah.
so when I figured out that that was not being incorporated into the messaging, it was deeply discouraging for me and made me have a further appreciation for Henderson and the track that he laid for our family and the generational wealth that he knew he was creating from those small choices. And so I've dedicated the last 8 years of my career to expanding homeownership to Black and Brown communities so that they can also set that track for their future generations, because you never know what's going to be the one vehicle of wealth creation in your personal life. Now, for most Americans, it is homeownership, right? Did
Yes,
Henderson know that 3 generations later, we were still going to be benefiting from decisions he was making in the late?
absolutely.
Absolutely not. He could never imagine this for me. But as Maya Angelou says, this is my favorite Maya Angelou poem here, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the
Yeah.
dream and the
And
hope
the
of.
hope of the slave.
Yep. So I think
Yes.
of it every single day because I want people to know one decision can deeply, deeply change the trajectory of your life, sorry, your children's lives, your grandchildren's lives, and maybe just even your great, great, great grandchildren's lives. So that's what I've dedicated my career to, really bringing that message home through the usage of down payment assistance, letting people know that there's resources out there and that this could potentially be a possibility for your family too. You never know.
You never know. So, Ty, so much of what you're sharing resonates deeply with me because we are cut from the same cloth as it relates to home ownership being a really important way of helping to create that wealth within the Black community. And I referenced at the top of the hour when I was talking about the month of August being Black Philanthropy Month. When we think about the ways that we can show up for our community, I mean, let's face it, there's many ways that we can do that. You know, the giving and the contributing and having an impact goes beyond money, but I don't want to dismiss how the importance of money and wealth is. And so when I connect that to home ownership, I am right there with you when I say that we do need to have a lot more education and awareness so that people, especially Black and Brown people, can see that as a pathway for wealth creation, to be able to contribute to their communities and to leave those legacies like Mr. Henderson. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, for inspiring you. And I love the story that you shared about how he was able to leave inheritance of these homes for his kids. That is a game changer. And so many of us may not spend time really understanding historically how the redlining and some of the other practices that were very discriminatory prevented Black and Brown people from being able to experience home ownership. And I'm just glad that there are people like you, Ty, that's leading the charge to help us combat, overcome a lot of those disparities that is hopefully opening up a window of opportunities for many Black and Brown families. And so I love this conversation so much. So all of this, the inspiration starting with Mr. Henderson, led you to co-found Arrive Home, which is great. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced as a Black woman in this predominantly white male mortgage industry?
Oh, yes, I am happy to. When I first started public speaking for mortgages, which is the crux of my job, that's mainly what I do. Is I sit on panels, I do podcasts like this, I go to
Yes.
conferences, and I get our message out there in any way, shape,
Yeah.
or form that I can. I do all the marketing for our company. But when I first entered into the speaking role back in 2018, I was really only asked to be on panels about diversity or panels about how to increase access to Black home ownership. And
Yeah.
while I was very grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak to people and deliver the message of down payment assistance as a resource to help more people get
Yes.
homes, I wanted to expand the box of my talking
Right.
points, right? Like just because I'm Black that doesn't mean
Right.
that that's the only thing I can talk about. I've got 20 years of
Yes.
experience here. Let's expand the conversation a little bit. So it took
Yes.
me a long time to make that jump from just speaking
Yeah.
about DEI to talking about, financial industry topics at large,
Right.
more industry topics, et cetera. And so that was really difficult for me because I felt like I was being almost pigeonholed, right? Almost
Yes.
saying you have to stay in this one lane. And if it's not about this, you don't really have anything to add to the conversation. So I just kept pushing and I would offer different talking points on different panels. And then someone would come up to me later and say, "Oh, I didn't know that you knew about this. Would you like to be a part of this one? And would you like to be a part of that one? And would you be open to flying here and being our keynote speaker?" So now I talk about all kinds of things. I talk about mental health all the time and how
Yep.
that affects our financial decisions, how that affects our long-term view for the future and what we
Yes.
think is
Yes.
possible, right? There's a nexus between all of it. There's intersectionality in every.
Right.
And so that
Yes.
was the most stressful and frustrating part of my career early on. But then again, you have to go back to who you are inside. I know I have an important message. I know I'm here for a reason, and just keep pushing and doing the work and highlighting diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that is important, regardless of the fact that right now there are certain people that are trying to turn that term toxic, right? Like
Absolutely.
marginalizing that word. I was listening to a podcast yesterday on MSNBC podcast, and one of the panelists said that DEI is basically the new N word. Like they're
Yeah.
inserting that to further marginalize, further toxify relationship with Black and Brown communities. And for me, I want to take that word back. I want to take that
Yeah.
acronym back and reincorporate it into our spirit as a collective, not just for Black and
Mhm.
Brown people. Stacey Abrams, she defines DE&I as diversity being diversity for all people, equity meaning access to opportunity for all people, and inclusion is a pathway for all Americans. Notice she didn't say anything about the Black community.
Right.
Notice she didn't say anything about the Latino or the Asian community. She's talking about bringing everyone to the table and expanding access for all people. And that's what I want
Mhm.
us to frame that around when we talk about DEI. And let's not make it, let's not toxify it the way they toxified the word woke, because we've been saying woke forever. And then they took
Exactly.
it and ran away with it and made it this negative word when really it's just
Yeah.
be on the lookout. Look out for your neighbor. Check your surroundings. Make sure you're okay. D&I is the same thing. We want everyone to feel represented. We want everyone to feel included. We want opportunity for everyone's children. And hopefully, with podcasts like yours and other things that are going on out there in the corporate space, the philanthropy space, in social engagement spaces,
Yes.
let's all do our part to take back DEI and remember what it really means.
I love that you are amplifying this message, and we've talked about it several times on the podcast because you're right. I think the noise is really loud right now, and we need to take back the power and the strength and the opportunities in the labeling of DEI. They are trying to reframe it in a negative capacity. So everything that you said is really spot on. We've been saying over the past, couple weeks since Mary Frances Winters and Dr. Sheila Davis had their call for
Yeah.
DEI leaders. It was all about DEI proud. Let's not let them get the satisfaction of us feeling weaponized when we are talked, when our space is talked about, our discipline is talked about in a negative way. And so we're gonna claim that and take that back. And I love that you are on board with that as well. We all have to be DEI proud. We all have to be.
Yes, and I think
Okay.
it's almost like the reclaiming of the flag, so to speak, right now. I
Yeah.
should have known something was up when Beyonce came out with Cowboy Carter and she was dripping in American flag
Oh
again.
yeah.
I
There
was
was a
like,
lot
I
of she got a lot of criticism. Yeah.
got a lot of criticism about it because unfortunately for the last almost decade, really, the flag
Right.
has belonged to a certain
Yes.
group of people,
Yes. But
right?
she was like, we're
And
gonna take this back. Yeah.
yeah, we're taking it back. This is our
Yeah.
country too. And we want to be an open, inclusive, loving, compassionate, and empathetic country to all of our countrymen, not just persons
Oh,
that look a specific way. So I love
yes.
reclaiming DEI. I love reclaiming the flag. And I love like solidifying ourselves that, hey, we live here too. We love our neighbors, we love our community, and we love being American. And so that messaging is coming through really loud and clear right now from specifically a lot of Black women, which has been really exciting to see.
Really exciting. So yeah, so Arrive Home, national
Sorry,
organization.
I
No,
totally lost my train of thought.
no, no.
Okay.
Listen. We're going to flow. We're going to flow. This is totally fine. I do want us to talk about Arrive Home, though, because this national organization is
Yeah.
really centering this important movement and opportunity that I think we need to make sure that we're amplifying. So, can you talk about the down payment assistance and the earned equity programs that Arrive Home offer?
Absolutely. So we co-founded Arrive Home 2 years ago, my team and I. We were with another down payment assistance company, and we were really frustrated with the way that they were processing loans, the opportunities that they were providing to people and not providing to others. And so we decided to leave and start our own company. And so the model of our company was to increase access to individuals who were responsible. And typically, people would associate responsibility with FICO scores, right? If you've got a high
Yeah.
FICO score, you're a responsible borrower. Well, that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true if you
Yep.
understand the way that FICO and the credit rating system works. So if I come to you
Hmm.
as an individual that's never had a credit card before, never had a car loan, but I've paid all of my rental payments on time, I've never missed a utility payment, I've made every
Yep.
cell phone and medical bill on time, you are considered a higher risk because you have not taken out credit card debt or a car loan debt. And we
Mm-hmm.
did not feel that the two were necessarily congruent. You can be a
Yeah.
responsible homeowner and pay your bills and prioritize your housing payment without necessarily racking up a lot of debt and then slowly paying it off so you have a higher FICO. And so that's why we co-founded Arrive, to really serve not only the people that have high FICOs and just need down payment assistance, which, to be clear, is a lot of people this day and age. When I first got into affordable housing many years ago, most of our consumers were people of color, people that were not
Mm-hmm.
able to get that down payment from their parents as a wedding gift. You know, I mean, a lot of my friends got gifted land as a wedding gift, got gifted down payments, got gifted condos to start their life on the right foot, right? And so it's always a crazy when I would go to weddings. Oh my God, his wedding gift to us was an acre of property out in X
Yeah.
city, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So back then, Black and Brown folks, Asian community members, Latinos specifically, they needed help with down payment assistance. We didn't have a whole lot of
Right.
like Caucasian people that were entering into our program. Well, speed forward to today, with the housing prices being as high as they are, market values increasing, interest rates increasing, which they just decreased, thank you, Lord. But we have a lot of people who are not typically people that need down payment assistance that now need that resource because the housing
Right.
prices are so high. The problem with saving for a down payment is it's kind of a cycle, right? So you're saying, I'm going to save $20,000 so I can buy a home. It's going to take me 2 years. By the end of the 2 years, when you have your $20,000, housing prices have gone up, interest rates have gone
Sure.
up. So now you need $30,000, and it
Right.
just moving the benchmark. And so that's where down payment assistance comes in. It says, hey, let's lock in right now. Let's get you into this home right now. And then you don't have to completely deplete your savings. And so you have those reserves in case you have any unexpected, debt or any unexpected expense, maintenance, etc. The earned equity program is something I'm really excited about. It was a concept that was born many years ago by my team and I, and it's taken us almost 4 years to really
Yeah.
lock in. So 5 years ago, one of our board members, he purchased a home from Freddie Mac for $1
Yep.
in St. Louis. Back then, it was, they had Fannie and Freddie were releasing homes in marginalized communities for $1, for, 99 cents. And the whole point was you had to come in, fix up the home, put it back on the market, and then sell it to a community member, which we
Mm-hmm.
did. We bought the home for $1 in St. Louis, very not the safest area ever. We had to actually hire a security guard to live in the home because the appliances and the HVAC kept getting stolen.
Oh,
So
wow.
the home was finally finished. We put it on the market for $100,000, and that was a very
Mm-hmm.
fair market rate for the area. We had 84 families apply for financing, and not a single
Mm.
qualified. Not
Mm.
one out of 84, because again, Black and brown folks use credit differently than the white community does. And a
Right.
lot of these people were entrepreneurs, cash-based businesses, food trucks, mobile dog groomers, hairstylists, eyelash techs, but they did not have the tax returns or the credit to qualify in a traditional manner. And so we
Right.
thought, there's got to be a way that we can create a financing model that will help these people get into home ownership And then they can show that they are not a credit risk and eventually do a traditional takeout home loan for themselves, either through Fannie, Freddie, or FHA. And so that's what we did. We partnered with a government entity, which is a tribal entity. It's the Tule
Yep.
River Tribe in Portersville, California. And as a sovereign Indian government, they are able to purchase homes on behalf of individuals. And those individuals do not necessarily need to be American citizens, which you know as well. If you're not an American citizen, you cannot
Right.
do traditional financing. And so we enter into a home ownership agreement with them, kind of similar to seller financing, where we finance the home, they make payments
Mm-hmm.
to us, and at any time they are able to be a takeout and either assume the loan 100% themselves, or if rates have gone down, they can refi at a lower rate. They get to maintain and keep all the equity in the property, enjoy the property as their own. And we're there to shepherd them through the process and have them eventually be the lead homeowner on title. So they do share title with us as well, so that they have rights to the usage of the property and rights to the equity of the property. Like I said, it took us 4 years to dial everything in, to get the technology built around it as well. So it's an easy process. But once we got locked and loaded, it's taken off. So it's been a really, really rewarding program. It's really rewarding when we talk to the loan officers, talk to the consumers, talk to our borrowers, and they're so grateful. They're so happy. They are just so happy for the opportunity, really, at the end of the day. They did never thought that would be possible for them. So this has been by far the most rewarding work of my career.
You should be incredibly proud of it, Ty. And I can tell that the passion you have for this is you're sharing with us. And what a tremendous, creative, innovative way to solve for a problem that many individuals were facing. And so I'm sure you probably have tons of success stories that you could share with us about really how the approach through this earned equity program was able to change the trajectory of many of the families that were able to benefit. So I love that. We are in this election season right now. And it's a high stakes election, of course, and there's a lot of excitement and hope for those who are really looking to VP Harris and the administration that she would be able to lead. I'm speaking into existence because I'm Team Harris all day long. Um, but what I want us to talk about is that a lot of what we're seeing that creates these challenges for Black and Brown people to be able to access home ownership, it starts with our federal government kind of having certain mandates and protocols and practices and support that allows many of these lenders and organizations that are in this financial industry to be much more open about what they need to do to help solve for it. And so if you were to have a conversation with uh, VP Harris or her administration and all the folks who are really going to be rallying around addressing all of these big issues that I know the United States has, what would you say specific to the space that you're in and what you're seeing based upon your experience?
Marcia Fudge was Secretary of HUD underneath
Mm-hmm.
President Biden's administration. And
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to meet her some years ago, and I know what a wonderful woman she was. And she and I both believe that housing education through HUD
Yeah.
is probably the best thing that we can do for our
Yeah.
marginalized communities of color. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, people talk about housing education. They're not really thinking about what that actually means. I've heard panelists say before, stop telling Black folks that they need housing education. Stop telling Black folks that we know we need to buy a
Yeah.
house. That's not what housing education is. When you get into home ownership, there are a lot of things that people do not necessarily prepare you for. And if you are
Yeah.
prepared for those things, you end up having a negative connotation associated with home ownership. And so it's deeply important that when we provide housing education, it's not just, hey, this is a great interest rate. When one of these interest rates come your way, then go try to get a home. Or, hey,
Yeah.
this is a great community. Why don't you just go live over there? And that'll be great if you can buy a home in that community. Housing education is teaching people how to care for their property adequately so that they can get the most return on their investment possible,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It also
Absolutely.
It's very
That's the
important.
only way that works for you.
That's it. If you just buy the home and sit in it, it's not going
Yeah,
to increase in value exponentially as it would if you were doing
right,
improvements, if you were maintaining the yard, if you were updating the floors, if you were just deep cleaning, caring for it, changing the filters, getting your HVAC service,
right.
all these little things that no one talks about. And yes, they do cost money, but you have to remember that the home is it's an asset, but it is a long-term asset. You will
Yeah,
look at it more like your 401k. It's going to take time to increase in value so you can maximize it at its most great potential. Right? Property taxes, that's another one. Have conversations around property taxes, property tax valuation. You can appeal your property taxes if you feel like they're too high or they've increased too much. Even when you're purchasing the home, if you get an appraisal and you feel like the appraisal may have a little bit of bias in it, maybe you're not
yeah,
getting the price you think you should have gotten when you put your house on the market, right? Or furthermore, the appraisal comes in super high when all of a sudden they figure out that you're a person of color trying to buy the home. Now they're trying to
right.
price you out of purchasing it. You can appeal the appraisal and ask for a new one from a new appraiser. Just things like that. The education component is so big because people often, specifically in our communities, say, well, if the refrigerator breaks and I'm renting, I can just call my landlord and then he'll come fix it for me. If the AC is broken, I'll just call my
Right.
landlord and he'll fix it. I'm locked in at this rental price for XYZ years. So why would I ever move? I think the more overarching point is every housing payment you make, whether it's a rental payment or a mortgage payment, is going to someone's bottom line. It's going
Absolutely.
to pay off someone else's investment, right?
Right.
I would rather that investment be mine. I want to reinvest in
Fine.
myself. And yes, when the fridge breaks, it is highly annoying to have to get a new one. Trust me, we all understand. But at the end of the day, I want to have that resource, that asset for myself, for my children, so that I can send them to college. Or if they want to start a business, be able to help them, assist them. If they want to buy a home, I want to be able to take that equity out and use it in a way that benefits me and my family, not a way that's going to benefit my landlord's family, BlackRock's family, investment companies' families, because that's all you're doing. You are totally investing in them and not investing in yourself. And so that would be the number one message I would want to get out to communities of color, even if it's not your dream home, even if it's not in the exact neighborhood you want. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to start
Absolutely.
somewhere, right? And then build that investment for yourself and for your future.
Yeah, so much goodness in what you just shared. We're closely getting to the top of the hour, so I do want to open it up now for our podcast community to ask questions, share comments. If you feel inclined, if you're part of our Zoom community, you can do so by using the raise hand feature that lets me know that I can add you to the spotlight if your camera is on and invite you to unmute and share directly. Or you can go to the chat and place your questions or comments there, and we will certainly get to as many of them as possible. If you're connecting with us today via LinkedIn Live, go to the comment section. We will bring those questions over into our Zoom community to make sure that we all are connected. I'm going to go to the next question while folks maybe are percolating on what type of curiosities are surfacing for you, but definitely be thinking about what you may want to share. I want to talk about what do you see as the future of affordable housing in terms of it evolving in the coming years, particularly for underserved communities.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of really exciting stuff that's going on in the affordable housing space, and I don't really see it being talked about on the news very often. So I will share, since that's why I'm here. There's a lot, specifically in the larger states. There's a lot of inclusion in ADU units. I don't know if your community knows about ADU units. It's called an accessory dwelling unit. So
Okay.
that's basically where there is a home on the property, and it's usually a little bit of a larger piece of property. It doesn't have to be acres, but it has
Yep.
somewhat of a yard. And so a lot of states are now enabling you to build an accessory dwelling unit on your land and use that as a rental property. Those rents are going to be far cheaper than your standard condo townhouse. Those mortgages, if you choose to purchase one of the ADU units, are going to be far cheaper than, even a smaller home, a townhouse, or a condo. So that's been really exciting to see them
Interesting.
repeal the ADU restrictions that have been provided on the law for a very long time. California was a leader in this. So it's been really exciting to see other states model after
Hmm.
that. Gone are the days of the sprawling McMansion suburbs. Yes, there are still
Yeah.
some, but if you pay attention to the housing unit trajectory, tiny homes are increasing, townhome units are increasing, twin homes, quad homes are increasing, community development is increasing.
Right.
What does community development do for our states of America? It enables you to purchase into a community at a lower rate because it's not a single family dwelling,
Right.
gives you access to resources like, gyms, pools, tennis courts, and a lot of these, which increases the activity of your lifestyle. And it also enables you to live in a close knit community, creating neighbors. And there's not
Mm,
space and difference. You have
right.
to commune together, right? Tiny homes are a really huge one too.
Yeah.
A lot of states like Utah, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, there's a lot of land out here in the Mountain West region and in the Midwest. And you can get a tiny home for a very affordable rate. And in a lot of Midwestern states, the plots of land are very inexpensive. I mean, look,
Yeah.
no offense if anybody is here is from Nebraska or South Dakota. I've never been to either one. And I don't know what the racial demographic is, but I do know that you can buy a very cheap piece of land and a tiny home, or even a smaller module home. Double wides, believe it or not, are becoming a huge thing. And I know when
Mm,
people hear double wide, they think trailer. No, these things have
yeah.
double ovens and full ranges. It's very, very,
Yeah.
and they're called a double wide only because they're created in a modular industrial environment. They're not built
Yeah.
on site.
Kind of
And
like
so
the container homes. Maybe is that
yes,
what should
it's
come to
very
mind? Okay. Yeah.
similar, a little different, but very similar. And container homes are a big thing too. So just look
Hmm.
into new ways of, increasing your access to home ownership. Not everybody is going to want to build some 5,000 square foot McMansion and all the yard maintenance and everything that comes along with that, right? We're kind of seeing a little bit of
Right.
a appeal from that way of life. People like to travel a lot more. People like to work
Yeah.
remotely. And so those things tend to come with smaller spaces. And I think that that's great for the country. We don't need to expand all the way across and have, 30,000 subdivisions in every state that we live in. It's more focused on community and living together as community members. And so there's a lot of exciting work in that field.
Yeah. And I would surmise, I could be wrong. This is just, a hypothetical for me, but I would think that maybe because of the pandemic and how people now are finding themselves working remotely, that sense of community has become heightened, right? For those that really love to have that level of socialization.
Yes,
And so, yeah, this
definitely.
is interesting. Really, really, really interesting. Thank you so much. You certainly have shared some intel that was not on my radar. So I'm really excited to dig deeper. We have shared your LinkedIn information into the chat. So I hope that you all will connect with Ty. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I do want to talk a little bit about from your perspective, Ty. What do you believe from a steps action perspective that mortgage and lending industries should take to rebuild the trust that has been maybe lost or compromised with marginalized communities? What can they do?
So during the Great Recession, 2008 to 2010, Blacks and Latinos lost more wealth than
Yeah,
any other racial demographic, Black
yeah,
specifically. This was because, and look, I spent 10 years in loss mitigation. For those of you who don't know what loss mitigation is, that's when you are behind on your housing payments and you're facing foreclosure. And loss
yeah,
mitigation is when you either call your lender or call an attorney and they attempt to modify the payment terms of your mortgage to help you become current again and slowly pay that back over time so you don't lose your home. I was in
right.
law commit for almost 10 years, and it's shocking the amount of people that just sign their paperwork and have no idea what an adjustable rate is, have no idea what a balloon payment is, have no idea that you've signed up for 3 years locked in at this one rate, and then it doubles. And then for the
Yeah,
next 27 years, that's what you're paying if you can't refinance based on what rates are. And so a lot of that was incumbent upon predatory loan officers. Let's just call it what it was,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Really, really directing their efforts towards the least educated about housing, which unfortunately is typically marginalized community. And when I say marginalized community, I don't necessarily mean just Black and Brown communities. I mean lower economic communities where they lack access to information. I
right.
think it was really evident during the pandemic. Some of the communities in our country that are marginalized are Caucasian and they didn't even have broadband internet out there. I
Right.
had no idea that we had this shortage of quality internet across the country. The marginalized communities felt it the most. And so these are the communities that the loan officers were going into and
Yeah.
selling them these dreams and then them basically blowing up in their face some years later. And so it's incumbent upon us in the mortgage industry to restore that trust through, again, what? Education. I'm going to keep saying it. You need to know the terms you're signing up for. You need to feel like you are talking to a trusted advisor. That's why I'm
Right.
so passionate about Access Lift 360, the nonprofit that I serve on the board of.
Yeah.
We really lean into diversified candidates, women's, people of color, the
Right.
LGBTQ community. We want to inform them to come into the mortgage space so that you can learn about mortgages and then go back to your community and be that trusted advisor because you know these people. These are your neighbors, these are your family members, and you can disseminate that information to them in a way that they feel like you are a trusted resource. If you are just rando schmando from Wells Fargo, nothing against Wells Fargo, but I'm not really going to trust you if you're just coming knocking on my door and saying, hey, has anybody talked to you about refinancing? Hey, do you ever want to purchase a home? Absolutely not. But if you're my sister's best friend, who I've known since I was a kid, and she says, hey, did you know that there's this down payment assistance program out there that could really help you? And the interest rates are really great right now. Or conversely, girl, this is not the time to buy a home, honey. Sit on the sidelines for another few months. And then let's see what, how the narrative changes, how the interest rates changes if the terms are more favorable for you. I think as an industry, we have to diversify. We need more women. We need more people of color. We need more
Absolutely.
queer people in the industry so that we can make meaningful conversations with our borrowers or would-be potential homeowners and regain that trust slowly over time. Look, between Jim Crow, redlining, the Great Recession, you got 100+ years of financial trauma that has been placed on our grandparents, our parents, our great-grandparents. It's going to take time to rebuild that trust. And the only thing that we can do in the housing industry is to make sure that we are disseminating very detailed, granular, and trusted information to all of our communities. And then slowly over time, that trust will be regained.
Yeah, yeah. This is the first time that I have heard language like financial trauma, but that is exactly what it is. It may sound really violent to some people, but when we think about how the Great Recession did Black and Brown communities in with the redlining, I mean, yes, that trust is absolutely lost. And so being intentional to try to regain that trust is 100% necessary. And I love the work that you're doing with Access Lift 360. I'm with you. We have to diversify. Representation matters. And again, for those of you who may not recall, when I was reading Ty's bio, I shared that Access Lift 360 is a nonprofit that focuses strictly on providing the mortgage lending industry with a more diverse talent pool. We need us, people who are not part of that dominant, culture, to be in all these spaces and places. And it definitely makes a difference in terms of how we bring others along and how we're able to be a voice for those that often aren't in the consideration set when key decisions are being made. And so I love the fact that you're connected to all of these really important endeavors. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left, and I want to give you these 3 minutes, Ty, to close us out in a way that feels appropriate for you. I feel like we could have had this conversation for a couple hours because there's so much more that I am interested in learning and hearing about, and I'm sure this community feels the same. But as we wrap up, I want you just to think about what are maybe some upcoming projects or initiatives or things that I haven't asked you about today that you're feeling really passionate about and have energy for that you want to socialize in this with this community.
Well, the thing I'm feeling most nervous about right now is I'm going to Burning Man for the first time at the end of the month. So thoughts and prayers are welcome.
Sounds
Thoughts
like
and
you have
prayers are
lots of practice though. So yeah, we're right. We are cheering you on.
Oh, no, I mean, just thank you so much for the conversation. I think if
Mm,
anything, the last thing I would say is always trust yourself. Don't be nervous about deep thoughts in your head that you don't want to confront. Sometimes change is hard. Change is often
gosh.
very uncomfortable. And sometimes you just get to lean into the uncomfortability and see where the path takes you. I went to school for interior design. I never in a million years thought I would end up in mortgages, and I certainly didn't think I'd end up in mortgages for the better part or over 2 decades now. Geez, I guess it's 2024, over 2 decades.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know where life's going to take you. And sometimes the worst decision you've ever made ends up being the best thing that ever happened to you. So
Yeah.
always remain open, always live in God's favor, trust the universe, and she will provide a way.
Yes, I love all of that. What a beautiful way to end our conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing with our community. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for your leadership and your voice. It really, truly is important. I'm already thinking about some opportunities to be able to connect you with some of the efforts that I'm a part of for the benefit of those in my local community. But nonetheless, I hope that you all will reach out to Ty, that you will form a relationship and be an ambassador of all of the great nuggets that she shared with us today. I hope to see you all again next week for another episode of Intentional Conversations VodCast. Have a great, healthy, safe weekend and go USA. Bye-bye.